Hey everybody, welcome to Unit 1, Beginnings in History through 500 BCE. This extra credit assignment is to read pages 1 through 7 and complete questions 1 through 21. Extra credit, all you have to do is do a little bit to get it. Any direction works, even a small jump. Some definitions I want you to look at in the textbook on page 3 is inveterate, which is unlikely to change, just like this guy. He's been meh for years. Diverge, which is separate routes or directions, also on page 3. Let's just take this one route and watch how long it goes. It doesn't stop, by the way. Next is facilitate, to make easier, on page 4. And this is supposed to be dividing his groceries, but let's just see how it works out. Oh, come on. It's a Toblerone. It's not the thing that separates. But it's pretty funny anyways. Great first interaction. Next is the domesticate, which is to raise plants or animals, and that is on page 5. Not a bad job raising it. They look pretty good, but wait a minute. That's the opposite of what we want plants to do. So we're raising them, not destroying them. Next is a nomad, somebody who moves often. And that's going to be listed on page 5, and these guys are moving often. But that is definitely not what he had planned to do in walking up the steps. And the woman's running away with her baby, and then, that's right, he's done. Pastoralist, which is an animal herder or farmer, also located on page 6. And folks, you can't herd cats. They just don't listen. They're constantly not following directions. Innovate, which is new ideas or methods, and even though there's cats on the corner, if you watch this little train here in this circle, not a bad idea. And if you want to see the innovator of this device, he is sitting in the chair in his Batman PJs, bored out of his skull. Next piece is we're going to be looking at question support, so I will join you back on page 3, the big picture. Turning points in early world history. Human beings have long been inveterate, and highlight that word, inveterate, storytellers. Our myths, legends, fairy tales, oral traditions, family sagas, and more have sought to distill meaning from experience while providing guidance for the living. Much the same might be said of modern historians, although they must operate within accepted rules of evidence, but all tellers of stories, ancient and modern alike, have to decide at what point to begin their accounts and what major turning points in those narratives to highlight. For world historians seeking to tell the story of humankind as a whole, 4 major beginnings, each of them an extended historical process, have charted the initial stages of the human journey. Ever since Charles Darwin, most scholars have come to view human beings in the context of biological change on the planet, and considering this enormous process, we operate on a timescale quite different from the billions of years that mark the history of the universe and of the Earth. According to archaeologists and anthropologists, the evolutionary line of descent leading to Homo sapiens diverged, and highlight that word, diverged, from that leading to chimpanzees, our closest primate relatives some 5 million to 6 million years ago, and it happened in eastern and southern Africa. There, perhaps 20 or 30 different species emerged, all of them members of the Hominae, or hominid family of human-like creatures. What they all shared was bipedalism, the ability to walk upright on 2 legs. In 1976, the archaeologist Mary Leakey uncovered in what is now Tanzania a series of footprints of 3 such hominid individuals, preserved in cooled volcanic ash about 3.5 million years ago. 2 of them walked side by side, perhaps holding hands. Okay, question 1. According to archaeologists, what is the evolutionary line of descent? Stop and think. And respond. Yeah, that's right. That evolutionary line of descent branched off, diverged from chimpanzees, which was our closest primate relatives. Question 2. Where did this evolutionary line of descent occur? Stop and think. And respond. Yeah, that's right. It was Eastern and Southern Africa. Question 3. What characteristic is shared by all hominids? Stop and think and respond. Yeah, exactly. It's the ability to walk upright, and that's called bipedalism. Bipedalism. Question 4. Define bipedalism. Stop and think and respond. No, not that far. Yeah, that's right. Bipedalism, and you may have answered in the last one, is just the ability to walk upright on 2 feet. And last question for this section, number 5. What did archaeologist Mary Leakey uncover in 1976? Stop and think and respond. And yeah, that's right. She uncovered footprints from 3 hominid individuals. Their footprints were preserved in cooled volcanic ash, and it was approximately 3.5 million years ago. Okay, moving on. Over time, these hominid species changed. Their brains grew larger, as evidenced by the size of their skulls. About 2.3 million years ago, a hominid creature known as Homo habilis began to make and use simple stone tools. Others started to eat meat, at least occasionally. By 1 million years ago, some hominid species, especially Homo erectus, began to migrate out of Africa, and the remains have been found in various parts of Eurasia. This species is also associated with the first controlled use of fire. All right, little question support. Number 6. What did Homo habilis begin to make? Stop and think and respond. Yeah, that's right. Stone tools. That's what they begin to make. Number 7. What is Homo erectus associated with? Stop and think and respond. Yeah, that's right. They're credited with leaving Africa. We know that because their remains were found in various parts of Eurasia. Eurasia being Europe and Asia. You can additionally write down that they're associated with the first controlled use of fire. Moving on. Eventually, all these earlier hominid species died out, except one, Homo sapiens, ourselves, with a remarkable capacity for symbolic language that permitted the accumulation and transmission of learning. We too emerged first in Africa, and quite recently, probably no more than 250,000 years ago, although specialists constantly debate these matters. For a long time, all the small number of Homo sapiens lived in Africa. But sometimes, after 100,000 years, they began to migrate out of Africa onto the Eurasian landmass, then to Australia, and ultimately into the Western Hemisphere and the Pacific Islands. All right, question 8. When did Homo sapiens probably emerge? Stop and think and respond. Yeah, that's right. And though this is a probably, it's probably no more than 250,000 years ago. And question 9. When did Homo sapiens begin to migrate out of Africa? Stop and think and respond. Again, this is another one of those probablys, but that's right. It's probably around 100,000 years ago. Okay, continuing on. The globalization of humankind. Today, every significant landmass on Earth is occupied by human beings, but it was not always so. A mere 500,000 years ago, our species did not exist, and only 100,000 years ago, that species was limited to Africa and numbered, some scholars believe, fewer than 10,000 individuals. These ancient ancestors of ours, rather small in stature and not fast on foot, were armed with a variety or very limited technology of stone tools with which to confront the multiple dangers of the natural world. But then, in perhaps the most amazing tale in all of human history, they moved from this very modest and geographically limited role in the scheme of things to the worldwide and increasingly dominant presence. What kinds of societies, technologies, and understandings of the world accompanied and perhaps facilitated, and highlight that word, facilitated, this globalization of humankind? The phase of human history during which these initial migrations took place is known to scholars as the Paleolithic era. The word Paleolithic literally means the Old Stone Age, but it refers more generally to a food collecting or gathering and hunting way of life, before agriculture allowed people to grow food or raise animals deliberately. Lasting until roughly 11,000 years ago, the Paleolithic era represents over 95% of the time that human beings have inhabited the earth, although it accounts for only about 12% of the total number of people who have lived on the planet. It was during this time that Homo sapiens colonized the world, making themselves at home in every environmental niche, from the frigid Arctic to the rainforests of Central Africa and Brazil, in mountains, deserts, and plains. It was an amazing achievement accomplished by no other large species. Accompanying this global migration were slow changes in the technological toolkits of early humankind, as well as early attempts to impose meaning on the world through art, ritual, religion, and stories. Although often neglected by historians and history textbooks, this long period of the human experience merits greater attention and is the focus of the initial sections of Chapter 1. Question 11. What percentage of time does the Paleolithic era represent of the total time humans inhabited Earth? Stop and think and respond. Yeah, that's right. It's estimated to be around 95%. Okay, I'm going to conclude here for this part, and we'll put the rest of it in the second part of the introduction. Again, these assignments are longer than what they normally are, just because there were so many questions in here. So I'll catch you back in part 2. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.